Officer, I'm telling you, nobody screamed. That's what scared me.
Yeah.
If somebody was in trouble, they would shout.
In the heart of East Legon, Accra, the mornings were usually loud. Vendors shouted over the street, Uber drivers honked at impatient cars, and the scent of fried plantain and wache drifted through alleys. But in a particular apartment tucked above one of the quieter streets, 3 young women lived a life that many could only dream of. Oma, Rita, and Monsa. Their days and nights were a mixture of charm, luxury, and indulgence. From dawn until late at night, their lives were filled with laughter, music, and company. They entertained men who paid handsomely for their attention, gifting them dollars, designer items, and perfumes that glimmered like treasures under the sun. The 3 girls knew how to navigate attention, charm, and seduction, and they did it with ease. Every new outfit, every night out, every flirtatious smile was calculated, yet it appeared effortless. But beneath all the glitter, beneath the glitzy clubs and the flow of luxury, they were tired. They were tired of counting every cedi, planning every outing, worrying about Uber rides, checking for deals, and budgeting for appearances. They wanted a life without effort, without worry, without the constant need to plan. They wanted a life that came to them, soft, abundant, and untroubled. It was Oma, the quietest and most analytical of the 3, who first suggested a way forward. She spoke of someone who lived the kind of life they craved. Someone wealthy, disciplined, and yet unbothered by the daily struggles that drained ordinary people. This woman, Auntie Esewa, was known for her luxury, her influence, and a secret she possessed, a spiritual water that could make wealth flow effortlessly. All they had to do was follow a simple rule. Eat together at the table. No leftovers. That was the only condition. Curiosity mixed with ambition. The girls were already chasing easy money from men in clubs and lounges, but the promise of effortless prosperity was irresistible. They agreed to visit Auntie Esewa, drawn by the possibility of a soft life beyond what even their wildest nights could offer. Auntie Esewa's home was a vision of indulgence. Marble floors gleamed like glass, golden chandeliers hung from high ceilings, and velvet curtains swayed lightly in the wind. Every corner of the house spoke of wealth, comfort, and a life that many would envy. Her calm demeanor contrasted with the girl's youthful energy. She exuded authority, confidence, and a quiet power that immediately impressed them. She introduced them to the spiritual water in a way that seemed almost casual. The water was invisible, untouchable, yet its presence was commanding. They would not see it, they would not meet it. They would only follow the rules, and if they did, the wealth would flow. The rule was simple: eat together, no leftovers, and respect the instructions. That was all. At first, the results seemed magical. Money began arriving as if from nowhere. Transfers, envelopes, and gifts appeared without effort. Invitations from wealthy men flowed steadily, each one offering dollars, perfumes, and luxurious items. Their lives, which had already been bright and indulgent, became smoother, easier, and far more pleasurable. Nights at clubs were fun but no longer exhausting. They could rely on the spiritual water to supplement their entertainment, their indulgence, and their lifestyle. Life was soft. Yet, subtle changes began to appear. Monso noticed the first signs. One morning, while in the kitchen, she heard a faint scraping sound under the fridge. She paused, unsure if she was imagining it. Soon after, the same sound emerged from the bathroom, even though no tap had been turned on. Shadows seemed longer, stretching unnaturally across the walls. She paused, unsure if she was imagining it. Soon after, the same sound emerged from the bathroom, even though no tap had been turned on. Shadows seemed longer, stretching unnaturally across the walls. Her body began to feel lighter, weaker, as if energy was being drained. Oma noticed the change too. Monsa was losing weight despite eating, her eyes darker, her posture weaker. Rita, bold and carefree as always, initially dismissed it, claiming it was imagination. But even she could no longer ignore the creeping unease. Objects seemed to shift slightly when they weren't being touched. Footsteps echoed in empty rooms. At night, a wet dragging sound circled the apartment, moving beneath doors, under the kitchen fridge, in corners that had always been empty. The apartment, once a haven of fun and laughter, was beginning to feel alive in ways that frightened them. Monsa was the first to realize that the cost of their soft life was higher than they had imagined. She began to feel that living was the only escape. But the rule, the spiritual contract they had accepted, prevented them from doing so easily. Rita, in contrast, continued to chase her nightlife, meeting men at the clubs, dancing, collecting wealth, seemingly unaware that each indulgence brought them closer to the unseen price. Eventually, the strain became unbearable. Rita was the first to disappear. One night, she left for a club and never returned. Days passed without a message, without a call. Her absence left the apartment hollow. Her slippers, once worn and scattered, lay abandoned by the door, a silent testament to her sudden departure. Amma and Monsa were left to navigate the apartment alone. They tried to maintain the routines. They ate together, as instructed. They followed every rule. Yet, the apartment's atmosphere grew heavier, darker. The dragging sound intensified. Shadows bent at impossible angles. Water scraped and whispered in the kitchen and bathroom. Every step felt washed. Every breath felt measured by something unseen. Arguments broke out. The girls, once inseparable, now looked at each other with tension and fear. Monsa could barely hold herself together. Amma, ever analytical, tried to negotiate with the water, pleading silently for mercy, for understanding, for a way to escape the haunting presence that had begun to dominate their lives. But the apartment was unyielding. The spiritual force demanded its due, its price that no one could see but everyone could feel. Monsa eventually left, unable to endure the daily fear. She stepped into the streets of East Legon, seeking the familiar chaos of life outside the apartment, hoping the city's noise could drown out the whispers that followed her. But the shadows of the water remained, even beyond the walls of the apartment, lingering in corners of her mind. Amma remained last. Alone, she studied the abandoned home, noting every detail, the untouched plates, the neatly packed bags, the slippers left as silent markers of absence. She tried to reason with the water, negotiate, plead. But it was indifferent. It was patient. It demanded its price, and it would take it. Finally, she left. Her steps were careful, measured, but every creak of the floor, every flicker of shadow, reminded her that she was never truly free. The apartment remained pristine, yet haunted. Every corner whispered the story of the girls who had wanted soft life. Morning arrived, quiet and bright. A police officer entered the apartment to inspect the scene. Nana, the neighbor, stood beside him, her expression wary. She observed the empty plates, the packed bags, and the slippers abandoned at the door. She knew the story without being told. These girls had chased wealth and pleasure without effort, relying on forces they could not control. She warned that there is no shortcut to life, no charm or beauty that can escape reality. The soft life had come to Oma, Rita, and Monsa, briefly and intoxicatingly. But it had a cost far beyond what they could imagine.
You lied to us. You didn't tell us the truth. I told you a price will be paid me. Oh, no way. We didn't sign up for...
Wealth flowed. Gifts appeared. Nights were luxurious. But in the silence, in the shadows, and in the wet scraping sounds under the floors and behind doors, the price remained, a quiet, invisible toll on anyone who sought the easy path. East Legon moved on. Cars honked, music played, vendors shouted. But in the quiet apartment above the street, The echoes of laughter, luxury, and shadows lingered. The story of three girls who wanted soft life became a whispered caution: there is no effortless path, no shortcut that does not ask for payment. The price is always there, unseen, waiting for those who dare to reach too far for ease.